My bad, guys. Something happens to the internet, so I had to start well, a new life, basically. We're gonna continue here. Just give me 1 second.
And then he
That's
quotes
sad,
digital
bro.
gnosis,
Damn.
a guy I know, by the way. And I would like to know what Carrier thinks fascism is. So he says government should treat everybody with equity, another thing I'd like to get into. My basic argument is just this. So if people believe there to be an invisible being that will punish them for wrongdoing, then they will be more likely to both avoid the bad behaviors and promote others to avoid bad behaviors. Seems like a very simple, logical argument. And I'm not really sure that my opponent's going to be able to refute it. So one thing I'll say about Richard, he's forgotten more about history than I'll ever know. But I'm not so sure on philosophy that that's the case. So with that, I'd like to just get right into it when you guys are ready.
I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to our friends at Maine First Project.
Democracy.
My whole intro, my whole discussion was about the importance of rights to maintaining a stable society. Fascist governments use force rather than use force to suppress rights rather than to maintain them.
So like the Second Amendment, for instance?
For instance?
Yeah, for instance. So let's take a look. The use of force rather than persuasion and democracy.
Yeah,
let's just start with this, right? Inside of democracy, at least the current one that we have, you want bumpers put on it. You don't want direct democracy, right?
Well, we need a rights-based democracy. So I do think direct democracy can work if you actually have the rights-based model. The main reason representative democracy works better, and this is based on evidence, is that representatives can actually, they're paid to have all the time to actually do all the research necessary to make the best decisions in terms of law. And so the average person doesn't have the time or means to do that. So they elect someone to do that for them. And so that actually works better. And so that's evidence-based reason. We should follow what the evidence dictates is the best way to organize.
Yeah, so do you agree with me that the government does try to use they try to use propaganda, persuasion, things like that? Is that acceptable in this worldview, or is that fascism as well?
Yeah, I don't know what you're using as your definition of those things. I actually disagree with the government engaging in open propaganda, and it's technically illegal. But the government does have to correctly inform us about evidence-based facts, so and about the laws and things like that. So the government does have to do things like that, but that's all evidence-based and is necessary for maintaining our freedoms.
Gotcha. Okay, so back to this. Now I think I got some clarity on some things. So use of force rather than persuasion and democracy. Don't you think that the American government utilizes force all the time? Constantly, in fact.
Illegally, yeah. The government violates this principle.
Well, legally. It legally does, right?
It legally uses, well, when it's doing it legally, it's doing it in aid of supporting these freedoms, right? So like that, as I discussed in the thing, freedoms can't go forever. When freedoms start to conflict, you have to resolve the conflict. And if that resorts to the point where you have to use violence to stop that conflict, normally, like we have a lot of other ways to resolve that conflict, so violence is the last resort, generally.
Yeah, but the problem is you say use of force rather than persuasion and democracy. Like, I don't know, if there's a protest going on, the government comes in, they shut it down, they're using the force of the state.
I agree. That's
is that fascism?
So it depends on particular cases, but sometimes it's not fascism because the government itself isn't fully fascist yet, but it is illegal and it is contrary to the principles that I'm arguing. So it is trending towards fascism if we allow that to continue. But sometimes it is actually justified. So it depends on the cases as to what you're talking about.
Okay, so any government which uses force rather than persuasion and democracy. When you say fully fascist, what does that mean? Like they just always use force rather than persuasion and democracy?
when it's actually codified as the law.
Okay.
Right? So like if the government's breaking the law, it's heading towards fascism. Okay. When it makes the violent things that it does that are inappropriate, when it makes those things legal, then it's a fascist state.
Okay.
So we're not there yet, but there's a risk of it.
I feel like I got your...
And that is exactly what the Founding Fathers wanted to prevent. They wanted to prevent exactly that outcome. And the organization of the Constitution was built to prevent that from happening. And so the fact that when presidents start ignoring the Constitution, that's extremely dangerous because it's starting to head towards that failure mode I talked about. And we don't want that.
Yeah, but you're not, I mean, you don't really believe in the Constitution, right? You only believe in the Constitution that you like? Because the original Constitution doesn't look much like the one we currently have, right?
Well, remember in my opening I said one of the things that the first
Yeah, what's up with
principle
this
that we
guy
actually have
just-
to admit once we adopt secular humanism, evidence-based reasoning, humans
He
first,
goes to a high
is
pitch
that we
very
have
quick.
to admit that sometimes we get things wrong, and so we actually
Ooh.
do have to learn and improve and get rid of bad ideas and replace them with good ones. So, and the Constitution actually has that built into it. It actually admits that some of it in there could be wrong and might need amendments, and so it kept having amendments, and here we are.
Yeah, so but this is really interesting, right? Because you are putting bumpers on democracy. What you're doing is you're setting a set. So the set is, well, we can have democracy, but only within the limits of things I think are good.
Yeah, that's
Isn't
because
that actually the case?
So, I think you might be mistaking me for saying that I believe that like democracy is somehow ideologically.
No. I just want to make sure I got it right.
Yeah,
so I'm not going to straw man the position, but
Right.
what
So
you're doing is you're saying
You
there's
need a
set.
rights-based democracy. You can't just have a democracy.
Yeah.
Because we know empirically when you don't have the rights-based part of it, bad outcomes occur. So you need that, just like we need a combination, and I know a lot of people probably don't agree with me on this. I don't think a purely capitalist society is anything but going to end up in a failure mode. I don't think a purely Marxist society is going to end up in anything but a failure mode.
Okay.
And so we need a hybrid economy. We need socialism and capitalism working as checks and balances against each other to prevent their excesses.
Yeah, but I get it. But what
And
you're still advocating
I'm using that as
here-
an analogy to
Yeah.
democracy. So democracy and the protection of the constitutional
But-
basis
but
of
what you're-
rights, they're checks and balances against each other. So
But
the
what you're
rights-based
still
system,
doing is giving us sets. You're
yeah,
giving us
so it makes
sets
a
of things that you.
empirically better outcome is to have that.
Yeah, but you're just giving us sets in democracy of you're allowed to do these democratic things within sets that you think are good. That is what you're saying.
What were you saying? Sects or sets?
Sets. Like a set. So if it's the case, for instance, that we have democracy, but we don't have what you perceive as rights we need, that's not a democracy that you would want.
A democracy that doesn't respect rights?
Yeah.
Correct.
Correct. And you would want
because we empirically know that doesn't
and you would
work.
want safeguards against that.
Yeah, you have to have that control. That's why you need a rights-based democracy, not just a democracy.
Okay, so you're going to oppress choice for people on purpose in order to create these bumpers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
exactly. And that's
Yeah.
all Christian nationalists are doing too. They're
No,
creating.
that's
hang on,
not-
hang on.
that's not
Hang
what
on,
they're
let me make
doing,
the
no.
argument. It is what they're doing. They're creating bumpers. For instance, let's just start
Well, they're
with
not
this.
just creating bumpers.
Well,
they're creating non-evidence-based bumpers that actually lead to
Well,
bad
they're not
outcomes.
non-evidence based. Like, for instance, can you tell me in your secular humanist society, is prostitution legal?
I believe it should be.
Yeah, of course.
It
And
should
do you
be,
believe
it should
that?
be legal and regulated the same way
Yeah.
the food industry
Sure.
is.
And do you think?
I have a whole article on this. You can
And-
check it out on my blog.
Okay,
It's,
and what age should women be allowed to be prostitutes?
well, adults, obviously.
What age is that?
18.
Okay, so you think that 18 years old, women should be able to be prostitutes, right?
Sure.
Inside of your secular humanist
Yeah.
society. How is that going to create better outcomes for the world?
So we actually have comparisons of states that have legal prostitution and states that have illegal prostitution.
Uh-huh.
A good example is Nevada. Nevada actually has some of the lowest STD rates in the country. And one of the reasons is because the prostitution there is regulated to engage in safe sex. So because prostitutes are often the vectors for STDs and the prostitutes there are cleaner, because it's a legal regulated thing, we have a better outcome. And in fact, it's just as good as the food industry or anything else.
Would you just regulate all vice?
Yeah, you got to regulate things within the same principles of what actually works to protect people from harm.
I see. And these are sets of harms which you think people ought to follow.
As
So-
long as they don't create more harm, like regulating creates more harm than the
But
harm it's
isn't
supposed
this
to regulate,
very-
then obviously it's not evidence-based
Yeah, but isn't
anymore.
this very idea of harm that you have just arbitrary and based on your own preferences?
No, I actually made a good case for it based on, we have all of these elements of the evidence we have from history of what systems work better. We have the evidence of what people actually like and don't like, when people don't want to be poor, don't want to be oppressed, don't
Yeah, but
wanna
that's
be-
based on your preference still. The
It's
idea
everybody's
is like this is
Yeah.
a preferable state of affairs for you.
for all human beings. All rational human beings will agree with these things.
What
all
about
rational, informed human beings.
Yeah, so like take Nevada for instance. It is true the STD rates are lower, but human trafficking's higher. How is that better? And by the way, if you take a look at many of these countries where you see human trafficking going on, guess what? It's directly correlated to prostitution, which is legal and illegal, including OnlyFans.
Yeah, I don't know about your statistics on that. Let's just assume that that's true. That isn't caused by legal prostitution, because that's the opposite of that, right?
It is actually.
So if you think it's caused by legal prostitution, then what you're arguing for is that the government should be more regulating of the industry, which is perfectly sensible.
Well, yeah, and they can regulate it by making it illegal.
Yeah, but that's
a great regulation. Like, oh, hey, you know what's really great about this? We can just make it illegal.
It has all the negative effects of hurting a bunch of people. It's a worse outcome.
Who is it going to hurt? How is it going to really hurt 18-year-old? How is this a better world that you are postulating, that 18-year-olds can prostitute themselves on the internet because you think that what they're going to do it? They're going to do it anyway.
No, they can do what they want.
That's right there. That's the argument right there. Because they're gonna do it anywhere. Let's just legalize it. Isn't that like a lazy way of just seeing society? It's just ridiculous.
Freedom. It's not the government's business to tell them what to do with
I think,
lives.
but here's where we deviate, right? Why is it not, especially according to you, when I look at what your definition is like, it does seem like it is the government's business to regulate these things. It's absolutely their business.
Only to the pursuit of harm. So
the pursuit of harm. 18-year-olds having sex on the internet is very harmful.
Let me answer your question earlier, where you asked about like what would be the benefit. There are actually several, but I'll just go into the one example that we're bringing so far. Legalizing prostitution reduces STD rates, and it reduces STD rates not just in people who are frequenting prostitutes. It spreads throughout the society so that even innocent people, by your definition, who aren't engaging in prostitution are actually being protected from STDs.
Yeah, and do we have some of the highest STD rates in the world right now with all of your free love, free sex? Don't stay out of my bedroom.
Do you know what correlates with STD rates around the world and in this country? Christianity.
Oh, I see.
The more Christian states have more STDs, the more Christian countries have more STDs.
So do you think that when this place was a lot more Christian, there were a lot more STDs?
Well, if we don't have data on that, I don't know. But
the answer is no. Hang on.
I'm talking about the data right now.
Yeah, I'm talking about the data right now too.
Rates, so we can show that there's a correlation between how Christian a country is and how many STDs there are, and therefore, the more secular the country, the fewer STDs there are.
No, actually, when we parse this is crazy. Actually, I would never expect you to make this argument. If you're talking about the more Christian an area is, the more STD it is. If we chalk this up between minority, non-minority, that's the case. And so this is what's really interesting about this. I bet most of the countries...
It's cross-country.
Yeah, but...
To other countries. Same in Sweden, when you compare Sweden to the U.S.
I bet most of the countries...
compare Japan to the U.S.
Are most of the countries that you're going to be making a comparison to where the STD rates really start to climb up going to be third world nations who are Christian?
Well, third world nations aren't necessarily free democracies. That varies. So that's not really a relevant comparison here. So, but no, when these are the studies. The studies show that when you have a more Christian society,
that makes no
whether
sense.
It's state or country, whether
that
it's
makes no sense.
Finland, for example.
Do you think we had
you can't blame STDs on minorities?
Well, I got it.
The statistics don't support that.
This is wild to me. Do you think that we were more or less of a Christian country in 1945?
Do you think? I think we're less of a Christian country now.
I agree. So if that's the case,
if we're talking about
shouldn't we see way more STDs in 1945 than we do right now?
I don't know because I don't know the data on that.
Oh, well,
of course, bro.
If I could demonstrate for you. If we just...
Of course. How convenient, eh? How convenient when you know that the country was mostly Christian. Majority Christian. Almost that. I was a 95% Christian. Of course, you have to say, I don't know the data.
Look at the historic STD rates, and we're seeing the STD rates grow, and this is attributed to things like sex work and promiscuity, especially sexual revolution since the 70s. Imagine this, Richard. I can just logically demonstrate this for you. Are people having more or less sex now that they have condoms, birth control, vasectomies, would you say?
Oh, yeah, definitely, probably having
and
more
what
sex,
would you correlate higher than sex for STDs? Anything?
Well, you can look at this where you see the military. You look at the military in World War II, the STD rates in our soldiers compared to the military now, it's down a lot. So
because they regulate sex, they regulate.
No.
Yeah. Well, yes, they
soldiers
do.
can have as much sex, even more sex now.
Wait
than
a
they
second.
did back then.
Wait a second.
So
let's back up. Let's make sure we got this right. Okay. So if it is the case that we go back to 1945, you say it's a more Christian country then, right? There's less STDs. You agree with me that it is the case that the correlation of STD, the highest one's going to be sexual intercourse. People are having more sexual intercourse, especially since the sexual revolution.
You got to be careful here because to do a correct comparison, you actually need to compare like with like. So there are conditions that change between...
We are Christian, less Christian. Like with like.
No, but I'm just saying that there are other conditions, economic, population size, all these other conditions that can affect the relationship.
What could possibly be
if
more
we
of a
wanna know-
correlate than penis and vagina? What?
Lots of things. Access
for an
to sex,
STD?
access to prostitutes, access to sex, access to other partners, and so on. All sorts
Hang
of
on.
things.
If we completely...
There are lots of things that can change this. So if
Isn't
you wanna,
it, hang on, Richard,
if you
isn't
wanna
it the
know
case if we eliminated
if you wanna know
sexual intercourse, there would not be STDs no more?
I'm sorry, say that again?
If we eliminated sexual intercourse, nobody's having sex, there are no more STDs, right?
Sure.
Okay, great.
But the problem is that then that creates a greater harm if you're preventing everyone from
Yeah,
having sex.
no, I understand.
So
that's not my
evidence-based, human-centered reasoning would
but
deny
that's-
that as
that's not
an
my point.
irrational move.
Yeah, that's not my point. My point is that this idea that you have that STDs, right, don't increase even though the population is having a lot more sex because you're telling the population that it's fine to have a lot more sex because this God
you're
creature...
wrong. You're scientifically wrong. And I can.
How am I
so there's-
scientifically wrong?
I'll give you an example. There's studies of polyamorous couples. The rate of STDs among monogamous couples is actually higher than the rate of STDs among polyamorous couples. Polyamorous couples are having way more sex than the monogamous people. Why is their STD rate down? Because they engage in safe sex. So that's the thing. You can't have that kind of correlation. If you're acting like a secular humanist, you're going to act in a rational way, and therefore you're going to evidence-based way. You're going to engage in safe sex, and therefore that's what we should promote. We should be teaching safe sex skills and so forth. So that actually also has been shown when you actually teach people safe sex, they actually have less STDs.
Hang on,
less teen pregnancy.
What demographic do you think is the most polyamorous? Would you say homosexuals?
I don't know.
Homosexuals, Richard?
So the relevant metric would be
Richard,
numbers.
is it homosexuals?
So no, you're asking about rate.
Oh, this too, yeah. This is him now being disingenuous. No, you asking simple question: is the same sex gay the most polyamory when it comes down to relationships and sexual intercourse? Oh my goodness, what the hell's going on with me?
Richard, is it homosexuals?
So. No, you're asking about rate, but if you're talking about raw numbers,
no, I'm just asking you: are there more polyamorous people
yes.
who are? Yes, thank you.
No.
And what are the STD rates of those polyamorous people?
No. You're wrong. There are more. Heterosexual polyamorous people.
Oh my God!
I'm talking about per capita, clearly.
Yeah. By raw numbers, per capita doesn't make your argument though.
Yes, it actually
does. It does. Oh my God! Yes, it does.
It does. What I'm saying is that if it's polyamorous people, you're saying have less STDs. If it is the case that when we look at homosexuals who are the most polyamorous, they have the most STDs. What are you talking about?
But you aren't counting the polyamorous, like the actual polyamorous homosexuals, rather than just.
We can literally do it right now. Do you want me to go through and show you? Yes, of course.
Homosexuals practicing safe sex. You have a stat showing homosexuals practicing safe sex.
Well, no, see, the thing is they have the most amount of sex. That's why they have the most amount of STDs.
But the example I gave shows that you can have way more sex and get less STDs. And so if that works in one population,
actually, you haven't demonstrated that. You just said it.
No,
but
there's a study you can find.
Oh, there's a study. Where? From who? Let me look at it because that
absolutely.
is.
So
yeah.
Anybody can Google it. You just go Googling it, try to find STD rates compared between polyamorous and monogamous people. So, just as I said in my opening, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. You don't have to believe what he's saying. You can go find this stuff yourself. And so all we're doing is informing you of that. And so you know what to go look for in this. And this is the thing. So it proves that safe sex reduces STDs even with increased sexual activity.
But it doesn't because if we look at
the lesson there is to promote safe sex, right?
Yeah.
It's not to suppress, send cops in to beat the shit out of you. Mm-hmm. We don't need Stonewall to get STDs down. We just need to have people who actually act responsibly, and we teach them how to do that, give them the skills and the means and access to that stuff.
Well,
it also lowers teen pregnancy. It lowers all the metrics that you're thinking of.
Yeah, let's just make sure that we get this right. I want to get into the argument now so we don't get too derailed. When we start with how do you think it is possible, okay, that if it is the case that there is an invisible being that will punish people for wrongdoing, that they will be more likely to avoid the bad behaviors and promote others to avoid bad behaviors?
We know for a fact that that's not the case. So the statistics show the more Christians are actually
this dude's saying the statistics show, right? But what kind of statistic? My goodness, I just drink coffee and my tongue is kind of heavy. Yeah, this dude's saying the statistics say, but you believe that the statistics that this dude is saying are relevant? I mean, this dude is saying that per capita is not even an argument. I don't know where you go from here.
Christians are 3 times more likely to be teen mothers or single mothers than atheists. So,
Oh my God, look at this dude. I mean, it's saying that. I guess so. At this point, I don't know.
But
Let's see
isn't
what.
that because
Obviously, it's
atheists are
not-
more likely to
obviously
abort their kids?
the Christian health
Oh
is not.
wow.
Isn't that why?
No.
Oh no.
There's no evidence of that.
There isn't?
There's no
Yeah,
evidence.
no.
No,
Okay.
there's no evidence on anything that Andrew's saying, guys. No evidence. Andrew is pulling all these arguments out of these, bottom, I guess.
So, and this is the other thing, is like all the other markers follow country by country, state by state. The more Christian, the more we have STDs and teen pregnancy. So obviously Christianity is not curing the problem. Whereas you look at the more secular states, it's actually being the secular state that is curing the problem. That's why Sweden is so much better off than us on these metrics. It's not because of promotion of Christianity, it's by promotion of secular humanist ideals.
Well, Richard, since atheists, it's like 91% of them are pro-choice, right? Why do you think that they would be less likely to get an abortion than people who aren't pro-choice?
So a lot of people say they're pro-choice and then go have an abortion. So you have to actually count who's really doing it, not what they say.
No.
Yeah, I know, but we're just going down to likelihoods here. So
Yeah.
do you think that it's more likely that a person who believes and is pro-choice?
You have to go measure it.
I'm
right?
asking you about likelihoods, Richard. Do you think that
I can't
it's
tell you likelihoods without data.
How can-
You got to have evidence.
logical?
You need evidence.
Logically, do you think it's logically
You need
likely?
evidence. If you're not reasoning from evidence, we're wasting time here. So
Okay,
you
well
need
then how can you
evidence.
make, if that's the case, then how can you make the claim that one or the other is less or more likely? You can't?
When I have evidence, then
That's
I
it?
decide. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's how
okay.
you decide everything.
I just want to make sure it's
You
just,
need
that's it?
evidence-based reasoning. If you don't have
Uh-huh.
the evidence, you can't make the claim.
Okay.
You need your positions to be based on the evidence and what actually happens. And so you actually have to go study. You have to actually go count. You can't just sit from the armchair and come up with these ideas. That doesn't work as a method. And that's one of the reasons why the Christian worldview is not best for society.
Okay.
We need a rational worldview that's evidence-based.
Got it.
That actually respects evidence as the fundamental authority, the highest authority.
So studies
that will make society better
Okay.
by all metrics, including
Studies
the ones we're
showing
talking
that all areas with legal sex work increase human trafficking inflows. Countries with legalized prostitution reported 20 to 30% higher trafficking inflows than those where it's criminalized, according to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. STD rates are lower in most Christian majority countries. Isn't that interesting? Driven by wealth and systems rather than faith. I'll give you that point, but it doesn't take away from mine.
Yeah.
If anything, highly
that's why
religious,
you have to
hang on,
control.
highly religious
You have to
Christians,
control
hang
for
on,
those other
hang on,
variables.
I'm trying. If anything, highly religious Christian subgroups show the protective effects. STDs are not more prevalent in Christian countries. In fact, the evidence points to the opposite. Christian majority nations, particularly those in Europe and the Americas, generally have lower STD rates than non-Christian majority countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Asia.
Yeah, see, wrong comparisons, right?
Yeah, well, this isn't being a direct comparison to
we need to
secular
talk-
nations, but most of these, there's not any nations which are purely secular.
Secular humanist nations have to be free democratic nations. Otherwise, they're not secular and they're not humanist.
Okay, yeah, but so the Christian nations, the Christian Western nations.
Well, so first of all, you can't include states that aren't free democracies because they have completely different metrics for what's going on. And then secondly, you can't include highly impoverished countries because obviously you have completely different metrics going on there. So what you have to compare is like with like. So you have to look at free developed nations.
So I just want to make sure. I think we're coming to the point of the debate where we can start to have a real good argument here. I heard you say that you think that you can get oughts from ises. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me how?
Yes. So if a surgeon wants to save the life of a patient, he ought to sterilize his instruments. And this can be scientifically proven as true. You can prove scientifically that the desire exists, and you can prove scientifically that the prescribed action will actually satisfy the desire. And in fact, that's called a hypothetical imperative. Philippa Foot has argued for, first of all, even Immanuel Kant agreed hypothetical imperatives can be proven scientifically. They are empirical facts.
So you think
And Philippa Foot argues that all morality is just hypothetical imperatives.
So you think Hume is wrong?
Well, Hume didn't say the thing that I think you think he said. So do you want me to go over that?
Yeah, Hume is saying mere ises.
Say it again?
Mere is. A mere is.
I'm not understanding.
Well,
you.
so what you're doing is you're taking things that are hypothetically loaded with oughts already, and that's the problem.
No.
Hang on, hang on. Let me make the case. You
Yeah,
are.
he's just ready to talk but not to listen. How you notice? He's very stingy. Look at this.
And that's the problem.
No.
Hang on. Yeah, hang on. Let me
He's
make
ready to say no. He's ready to not listening.
case. You are. Yeah, what Hume is talking about a mirror is. So like the door is cold. How do I get an ought from that?
Yeah, so Hume said that he didn't say that you can't derive an ought from an is. What he said was that religious people, Christians, were not doing that they were just ordering things. They were not demonstrating that the ought comes from the is. And that's what Kant actually did, is he showed that hypothetical imperatives, you can do that, and you are doing that. So the ought comes from the is. The is what is your desire?
Again, I'm going to ask you the question. The door,
what best achieves the
the
desire.
door is cold. How do I get an ought from that?
Well, that particular, you're missing half of the question. So, like, you would have to know what is the desire that relates to that. And then you have to rationally order the
No,
desires.
it's because that's a mere is. It's a mere is
yeah,
statement.
but you can't derive an imperative without referring to a
That's
goal.
because it's a mere is.
No, that's... Well, yeah,
No,
yes.
it's because it's a mere is.
Yes, but
You're
it has
hang
nothing
on,
to
you
do-
got this
imperative-
wrong.
Look, imperative propositions
Yeah.
are built out of two facts, two actual objective facts.
Mm-hmm.
A goal and a means to the goal. So just describing a doorknob doesn't describe any goals, so you can't get an imperative out of that.
Because it's a mere is.
And it's therefore irrelevant to
No,
what we're
it's
talking
therefore
about.
the most relevant.
No,
if
you
you
have
have
to-
a mere is
You
statement.
can't get imperatives without goals.
Yes, that's
So
what
you have
Hume
to
is
say-
saying.
Exactly.
Hume is applying this to a mere
Yeah.
is. Why are you saying exactly? You just disagreed with me 5 seconds
No,
ago.
he agrees with me on this.
No, he
agrees-
didn't agree with you on this. He's talking about a mere
You're
is.
skipping the goal. This makes no sense. No, Hume was saying that once you have, and that's why he actually developed his moral system based on human sentiment. So it's based on what you want, and therefore in the rational ordering of desires. You have to have the goal.
What is Hume's guillotine?
Goal plus the facts equals imperatives,
Yeah.
and that's how you get hypothetical.
What is
imperatives.
Hume's guillotine?
Say again.
What is Hume's guillotine?
What is Hume's
Hume's guillotine.
guillotine?
Yes.
Are you talking about this, the thing we're talking about right now?
I'm asking you what Hume's guillotine is.
Well, you describe it.
Oh
can
my
just-
God, this dude is just a gaslighter. This dude's a gaslighter, man. Oh man, this is gonna be very disingenuous debate, man.
Say you don't know.
Yeah,
sure,
you can
go
say you can say you don't know, man.
Well, you describe it.
Ugh.
You can just say you don't know.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, so you don't know.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
I don't
okay.
remember. I've heard of it, but
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yo,
For
man.
as
it's the
this
same
ought
thing.
or ought not expresses some new relation or
Yeah, it's the same
affirmation,
thing, right,
it
yeah.
is necessary that it should be observed and explained, and at the same time
Oh
that a
my
reason should
God.
be given
Yeah.
for what seems altogether inconceivable. How this new relation can be a deduction from others which are entirely different from it. He's referencing a mere is.
Yeah, and then he goes on to explain that the mere is once you get a goal is the is, then you actually get the result.
Well, that's because the goal is the ought. You're conflating. So this is the problem that you're conflating here.
Well, you're talking about values versus ought.
Well,
ought derives from values. They're not identical, right? Like you have a value.
So you- wait, wait.
What you ought to do can depend on your value.
So
They're
how
not
are we getting the
identical.
ought from the is here?
So oughts come out of the combination of two things: a goal, you
Mm-hmm.
call it values, and the means. Right. So like whatever the facts are in terms of what best achieves that goal is then the true ought regarding that. So you have to have the goal. And so the question is, how do you get moral goals?
But
And
that's already loaded with ought.
no.
Yes.
You're starting with values.
What do you think ought?
Values don't have oughts.
Richard,
in them.
what do you
have
think
a
ought means here?
Just a value by itself is
Yeah.
like a doorknob. It doesn't entail anything. The value by itself, in conjunction with the facts of the world, then derives the ought. So they're not identical. The ought is a derivation of two facts.
Yeah, but the is not giving you that ought. Some
Two
other
ises.
category
The
is.
goal is a fact. It's an is, and the means is an actual fact as well. So you have two facts.
Wait.
but you have to have both facts. This is like
Help me.
basic
Hang on.
stuff.
No. You got to help me out with this one. I guess I'm a little slow. How could it be the case that if you have a goal, right? I have a goal, right?
Yeah.
Ought you do that goal?
Yeah. Say again.
Ought you do that goal?
Okay, now that's you can't answer that question just by itself. Just with the value, you can't answer that question. You need the facts. So that gets
What
to
the
rational
hell?
ordering of values, and this is another thing that Hume talks about. Is that
So then the is statement here,
Yeah,
right,
which-
is again moving back
you're
to a
asking
mere
question
is.
like which value should you have?
Yeah.
Right. But if we set that aside for a moment,
Yeah.
as soon as you have a value, then there are true ought statements that derive from that value. Now, the question is, What is the rational ordering?
No, there's not true ought statements that derive from.
So like as soon as the doctor wants to save the patient, he ought to sterilize his instruments. The ought immediately follows from the combination.
Yeah, but do you see you already entailed the ought in the is?
No.
The doctors wants to do X.
I think you're doing a semantic thing here. Like
It is semantics are important when we're about to talk about what we ought to do with society.
The ought is a combination of two facts, and you keep confusing the ought with one of those facts.
No, I'm saying that what you are doing here is you're preloading, right? You're taking a statement.
It
yes,
derives
you are.
from two facts, neither of which is an ought.
No.
Now,
well,
if you want to get to
it's
like
a mere is.
What-
You're actually. I can
I-
actually demonstrate this for you.
Let me see if I get this right as to what you're trying to get at. Is you don't object to the fact that oughts can derive from an is once you accept the goal. What you're asking is, how do we decide which goals we ought to have?
No, let's back up.
Okay.
So let's start with this.
Which is the two things?
Yeah.
which of
How
those
do
two
you get
things?
when you say right a doctor, he's going to save a patient, right?
He wants to
save a patient, right? Well, that's already the ought, right?
No, it's not.
Yes. Why does he want to save him then?
So no.
Why he thinks it's an ought, right?
An ought actually has to have two pieces. So this is a semantic fact about what the imperative language requires. It requires a value, a goal, and the facts, and you derive the ought is sterilized instruments. The ought is not want to save the patient. It could be, but once you accept, you just for whatever reason we haven't justified why the doctor wants to do this or that he should do this or that. Once he has the desire to do this, an ought is automatically.
Do you see, like, if you said, I don't know, all Christians, right? They should go to church. Or you just say, like, I'm a Christian, and so the ought there is you must go to church. That's even better. The ought there is you must go to church because that's entailed with Christianity. You can't be a Christian if you're not going to church. Can't save the patient unless you're using the instrument. Hang on.
I don't think that's true.
You can't save
Lots of Christians don't believe you have to go to church.
Yeah, but
to
let's
be a
just say
Christian.
that was the agreement of what the definition
Sure,
of a Christian
yeah.
is. Okay, is that you have to go to church or you can't be a real Christian, right? You're
Sure,
saying
let's
so.
assume everybody agrees
So
to
you
that.
ought go to church based on that is, right?
Yeah, but notice.
But no.
The ought is not identical to the is. The ought is derived
No,
from two
you're
different
loading
ises.
this to something
So
past
you're
mere is.
conflating
No.
the value with the ought. So the ought is sterilize the instruments. The value is wanting to
No,
save
that's
the
you're
Wanting to save the
mistaken. You're
patient is
mistaken
not
here with a
sterilizing
mere
instruments.
is.
Sterilizing instruments is the ought, not the wanting to save the patient.
No, there's no ought entailed there unless it's a mere is. Otherwise, you
No,
already are
it
giving
is
the
entailed.
ought.
The ought, sterilized instruments, is logically necessarily entailed by the value to the desire. The desire is to save the
Because there's already an ought.
No, there
Yes.
doesn't have to be.
Yes.
So I think
Although it's a mere is statement is what we're looking at.
No,
I mean,
no.
I can demonstrate this for you a million
That's why
times.
I was trying to ask if you wanted to get at two different questions here. It sounds like you're confusing the two.
I'm not
questions.
confusing it.
Yeah, you're definitely confusing.
I'm
it,
definitely
because
not.
You keep switching between two arguments.
No, I'm switching.
So
I'm only using
it sounds
one.
like you want to have
Mm-hmm.
the ought for the why ought the doctor want to save the patient? That's a different imperative. That's a different ought statement from what the doctor should do once he does desire.
Because you're already loading the ought in it.
No, there's no ought
Yes.
in there. It's just the desire.
It's a mere look.
All
what,
it is a
what
desire.
Hume's,
It's not an ought. A
what
desire
Hume's
is not an
guillotine is
ought.
talking about is mere is statement. The door is.
Yo, they're discussing something that I don't even give a damn at this point. I guess they're just going back and forward to just determine who's more smarter than the other one. I don't know.
Cold.
Yeah,
the door
I
is cold. You
definitely
can't get an
think-
ought from that, right?
I think you're obfuscating here, and I think
I don't think I'm
So
obfuscating.
would you give me a moment to explain that?
Yeah.
So I can actually, so your audience can hear this. So,
Okay.
I want to give you a chance as well, but then
Yeah.
in just a bit, because we've gone on with this topic for a decent amount of time, I do want to make sure there are other topics explored if you guys are
Yeah,
up for it.
yeah. Let's get to the
What's our time
subject.
left on the conversation.
37 minutes in total.
Okay. Remaining. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So when you construct an ought, the ought is the thing you ought to do. So the sterilizing instruments, that's the ought. So you ought to sterilize your instruments. The value by itself might not be an ought at all. It might not even be true that the doctor ought to sterilize that he ought to want to save the patient. Maybe he ought not to want to save the patient, but he wants to save the patient anyway. Just the possession of the desire, even if it's not justified, just the possession of the desire entails an ought. The ought is the sterilizing the instrument, so it's different from the value. So you can't conflate those two things. Now, if you want to ask a different question as to why ought the doctor want to save the patient, now we're moving to a different ought. We're moving one step back, and then we get to the whole point of Hume about rational ordering of values. And I talk about this again, for people who want to go further into this, if you're not following or it's confusing or whatever, if you want to know more about this, and my full demonstration is in the article in Religions that I cited in the thing. And you can find it's moral facts exist in all possible universes. You can Google that and find it. It's free. It's not paywalled. And so you can read that and you can see how actually philosophers
you can't eat all the time with endless those diatribes. So the reason here's what's going on.
He's a smart. Listen, he's a smart dude. He's a smart dude, but again, it's just his ability to just listen. I think he's very smart, right? But the ability of listening is not there.
Untangle a concept. We're both making an ought claim. I'm making the ought claim that I think Christianity is better for society. He's saying secular humanism is. Yeah. And so what we're doing is we're untangling the philosophy behind that, is whether or not an ought's a mere is or not. He doesn't believe that it is. And so that's the point. This is why semantics and untangling these things is so important.
Oughts derive from is all the time, including the oughts we're discussing here.
Mere
I even explained the desires and why people ought to have those desires.
But it's for a mere is. But here's the thing. Diving into this, I guess, kind of getting back to the idea of Christian nationalism. If it's the case that in this democracy we go ahead and vote in Christian nationalism, what's the problem with that?
So once you allow that to happen, this is exactly the thing that the founders wanted to prevent. They have all of that stuff in there to prevent exactly what you're describing. That's why they have no religious test. That's why they have the First Amendment. There's various other things that actually designed to prevent ideological capture of the government. The government has to serve evidence and reason and just maintain a civil society and not dictate what moral values people should live by.
That's not answering my question, though. I'm asking you if under this democracy we vote in Christian nationalism, what's the problem with it?
Yeah, fair point. I'm getting to that. So what would be bad? Or all the things that I described before. We're going to have...
Now, what would be bad, ultimately, under democracy, the system itself is set so that we can do this, right? If people think it's in their own best interests to vote based on their Christianity, you shouldn't have a problem with that, right?
As long as we follow the law. Yeah, the way the Constitution is written, it should prevent this. But if we ignore the Constitution, burn it down, then, you could have an ideological capture of the government.
Yeah.
But we're not supposed to have that.
Wait.
Once you allow someone to capture the government, then you immediately allow someone else to capture the government.
How would this be capturing the government? You want people to vote based on their value structures, right?
Well, as long as they're voting in the same interests of the goal of the government.
That you want, right?
That they would want, even a rationally ordered person.
Hang on. If entailed here is that they don't want that.
Let me finish that my explanation to that. So if you allow a government to just, people to just vote for what ideology the government can push, then it's a matter of time only that someone gets in and pushes the ideology you don't like and forces you to do things, like prevents us from having this meeting. For example, that shuts this down, like maybe it would happen in China, for instance. As soon as you allow that to happen, you will lose control of the government, and bad things will happen as a result. That's how we get fascism and all of that stuff.
Yeah, but do you see how you're not answering to this?
But the goal then is therefore to prevent that.
Here's what I'm asking again.
You have to structure the government so that you have the government's neutrality. It treats everyone the same, and you build it so that it cannot.
Richard, can you answer to the question? If it's the case in democracy, people vote in Christian nationalism, how can you make the claim they don't want it? And if it's the case that we're after human flourishing, if it's the case that we're after human flourishing, isn't that, what you're basing this on is we should stop them from doing that, right?
Well, so as long as they're following the Constitution that was built to prevent that, right, then that's not going to happen, right?
Well, you can vote here.
That's ignorant. Any change can happen in any government. Right, even though there's a constitution, right? These things can be thrown away. You know what's crazy? I was watching yesterday the Napoleon War when they invaded Spain. when Napoleon invaded Spain, they even changed the constitution, the Spanish constitution, right then and there. That's why they created an uprising in Spain against the French government. This is what happened when you have no understanding of how laws really work. He's a smart guy. He sees books, but At the same time, the concept behind a lot of this stuff, it comes down to force. Oh, because there's things that just prevent this. Bro, that doesn't matter. You think if a bunch of Muslims, let's say 51% of the American political system become Muslim, do you think they're going to just care about what is going on in the Constitution? This dude right here, who...
people to get rid of parts of the Constitution you don't like.
But changing the Constitution requires more than a majority vote. So yeah, what would happen? Here's what would happen.
Back up.
If we got
people can vote in politicians, right? Who can then do things which would change the Constitution, or there could be a constitutional convention.
You know how the Constitution? Yeah, like it's a law.
Exactly.
Constitutional amendment change. So let's assume you've got a society that's so...
and it depends on how the Supreme Court rules.
Let's assume you've got such a... let's say it's 75% of the country now is Christian nationalists, and they actually get the legislatures they want. They actually, in all the states and everything, and they get the Constitution changed. What my proposition would say is that's when things are going to go south. That is actually going to go against human interests because of all the past examples.
So what does that mean, going against human interests? What if your interests are going against my own interests? That makes no sense. That's a bad argument.
So you want to stop them from doing that, right?
I would want to stop them from doing that.
Would you use force and persuasion to do that?
Only if they are breaking the law. If they
but they change the law to their preference.
Yeah, I think in that case, if that happened, if the country actually voted to destroy itself, I would have to leave.
Okay, so I just
all right, dude. Sure, you have to leave.
So I just want to make sure though.
Damn.
Would you use force rather than persuasion in that case to stop that from happening?
Only if they use force against me. If they're using force, then I'll use force. But if we had the whole country literally just decided this to basically just
it's not the whole country.
Destroy the country.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
I would actually have to leave. And if they tried chasing me and finding me,
they're not trying to chase you and find you. Yeah. The spirit of the question is asking you. I'm asking you a simple question.
Force is met with force.
Yeah, I'm not asking you about force being met with force. I'm asking you if force should be used to prevent this if necessary. So, like, let's say, for instance, I don't know, 60% of the nation wanted it, and the rest of them didn't. Should they, at that point, be using force rather than persuasion?
So if they did it, like they actually did it, then I would just have to leave. Because if they're not
You're not answering the question, dude.
Unless they start using force against me. Like if they come for me to like kill all the atheists, well, now I have to fight them.
I'm asking you...
Which never happened in the last 100 years, guys. What you see is the other way around. Like, you see when atheists and secular take over, the first thing that they go after is religious institution. We saw it with Lenin. We saw it with the Bolshevik Revolution. We saw it even with the Spanish Civil War. The first thing that the communists do is just take the religious leaders.
If it's the case that force should be used by people who are in a minority, if the majority is voting in these policies, yes or no?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Should people, if necessary, use force, even if it's the case that these are being voted in legitimately, right? Is there some problem with people using force at that point to stop it?
Well, I think at that point, it is the wrong word here. So, like, what then happens? So once they've done it, and they turn around and start using force on us.
Well, what force?
To go kill all the atheists?
No, they're not. No. They could just do things like, I don't know, no more gay marriage.
By the time, look at the French Revolution. By the time they get in there, you won't have control of what they decide at that point.
But
they
you can't
decide to go kill all the atheists.
But what I'm saying is that is it the case that you would, if you had X amount of like people in a minority, they felt that they were being oppressed. They just weren't being oppressed with violence necessarily, unless it was a case they were then breaking laws.
At some point, it has to be violence. There has to be violence, right? And so if you're
then that would be the case with anything. If you just violate any law, there's violence.
If you take away all the rights, but then never enforce that, then you're basically just respecting rights.
I totally agree.
If you take away all the rights and then enforce that, you're using violence to take away people's rights.
But I mean, this could be phrased however you want. There's a right for men and women to get married. That's it.
A right?
Yeah, you just say there's a right for men and women to get married. Now we're enforcing that right, right?
Yeah,
and then homosexuals get married. They say, oh, well, and you're not allowed to do that. You're violating the law.
Well, so I'm pretty sure, if you want to follow the logic on that, I agree with the conservative Supreme Court decision written by Neil Gorsuch and concur.
Yeah, you correctly, Ralph Larino. Disparity in human society is due to lack of principle in a godless civilization. Yeah, that's what it is. And remember, when you eliminate this type of institution, like a religious institution from in a society that was built in such influences, it's just gonna go sideways, because then whatever you put new, it's basically it's gonna be based on and whatever that preferences in moral code is. In this case, it's gonna be secularism. So secularism say that their preferences can change, daily at that point. That this is their way of just seeing things.
By Roberts on why actually that it follows out of the Civil Rights Act, that it would be against that. So you would have to overthrow the Civil Rights Act. Okay.
Or just have it reinterpreted or amended.
Yeah.
You could have things amended, things like this. Well, what I'm saying is that these are all, this was done in a lawful way, right, to get these things done.
Which it was, right? So
but if it's done in a lawful way to get them undone, right, is that now fascism?
What do you, no. So
yes or no?
Fascism.
Or no?
So if it's done in that way,
yeah,
the process is not fascist. The end result might be if they start coming after you with billy clubs to like arrest gay people, for example.
Well, they're not going to arrest them, but what if they just don't let them get married?
But if they just don't
hang on, Richard, let me ask the question. So let's say, for instance, they go through, they outlaw OnlyFans, prostitution, things like this, make that law. They outlaw homosexual marriage, make that law. Right? They outlaw things like transgender kids getting reassignment surgery, and they make that a law.
Sure.
All right? People violate those laws. They then get arrested or things like this, like you would for any other law. Is that now, are we in fascist territory?
No, because at that point, the people are actually having a say, and they're just using a lawful, nonviolent process to decide what rights they're going to have.
Perfect.
Now, we would engage in persuasion, right? And so I would think that that's going to be bad. It's going to lead to bad outcomes.
Now, then tell me any of the current
actual basis.
This is perfect.
Evidence. So this is why secular.
Now we're getting there.
Evidence.
So help me out here. What Christian nationalist proposition then fits this form of fascism? Use of force rather than persuasion, democracy.
Yeah.
Which one? Which actual proposition being proposed by Christian nationalists right now?
It sounds like
you're
defining Christian nationalism as simply taking away the rights of gay people to marry.
No. I'm asking you a specific question. I'm going to ask it again. What proposition from anybody who's advocating Christian nationalism would not fall under the idea that they're changing the laws to better suit themselves, including amending several constitutional amendments or things like this? How would that be fascism? By your definition, that's not fascism now.
Right.
So if that's the case,
it only becomes fascism when violence comes up.
Yeah, right, exactly. So Christian nationalism is not, in fact, unless you can give me the propositions of Christian nationalism that are going to lead to this sort of violence rather than just law changing, can you?
So are you claiming that Christian nationalism won't increase?
I didn't claim anything. I asked you a question. Can you steel man or at least repeat back?
I got to understand what you're getting at. So I need to
you don't.
See,
you don't need to understand.
Yeah, see, he's not listening. See, there you go. He got caught. He's not listening. He's listening to just review. It's like a review what he's saying without really getting to the substance of these arguments. Like, he's a smart dude, so he's right. He's quick to just say stuff, but he's not really listening to these arguments.
Understand what I'm getting at to understand my question? You just need to answer the question.
I don't know what you're asking for.
Well, let me ask you again.
Yeah.
Christians right now, Christian nationalist thought leaders all over the place who are saying we want to amend these various laws under the democratic rules, use the Constitution in order to amend many of these laws, right? And then if you violate those laws...
protected right to do that, to talk about it?
Yeah. So hang on.
We have the protected right to persuade people to
I understand, but what I'm saying to you is how could that be fascism if there's no use of force being involved here? So if the can you show me the Christian nationalist proposition that leads to force?
If you're talking about the Christian nationalist government is not going to use force to enforce any laws or do anything.
Your secular government will.
Yes, but those are evidence-based, human-centered things. They're not based on ideology.
That's not what you said. You said fascism is use of force rather than persuasion democracy. It doesn't matter if they're using evidence or not. Hang on.
Persuasion and democracy.
They're utilizing persuasion and democracy, and they're still utilizing persuasion and democracy.
Yeah. Yes.
So they're not fascist, right?
Well, they're not advocating. I mean, they might be advocating for a fascist government, but they're not fascist yet because
no. That's not what I'm asking.
To violence.
This is wild to me. So help me out here again. If it's the case that democratically, for instance, we just say no more trans, right? You're just not allowed to be trans anymore, right? Or I don't know, you're not allowed to get married as a homosexual anymore, and you're not allowed to do prostitution anymore. let's just say that you're like not allowed to gamble or do drugs anymore, ever, right? You're not allowed to do any of those things.
Yep.
That's passed democratically through persuasion.
Yeah.
Now it has the force of law.
That's right.
That's no longer fascism.
That by itself is not fascism.
Then can you give me any
if you can
Christian
also-
propositions?
If you can persuade people to vote again to take those things away and change them, yes.
Then show me the Christian nationalists out there who are giving the proposition which would lead to this fascism you're talking about, because that's all they're talking about doing.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what you have in mind as Christian nationalism, like what the Christian nationalist government
That's
would
not
do.
my question. My question is, can you name a single Christian nationalist right now who is proposing anything other than just amending laws and tailoring them to their own preferences?
Wait, so like, let me see if I understand what you're asking. So you're asking if, so like, for example, the kill the gays people, for instance.
When there's no
there
Christian
were-
nationalist seriously proposing to kill homosexuals. None.
Yes, absolutely.
Who?
So there was a guy who ran in Texas, had got like 100,000 votes on the kill the gays biblical policy concept. So
come on. This is not serious. There's
Oh,
no
dude, come
serious
on now.
political
Dude,
movement.
come
He went
on.
to Uganda and got it done there, and actually got Uganda to actually start trying to kill the gays. And then, of course,
I don't think
changed
Uganda
everything.
needed much help with that, right? But the thing
Yeah,
is,
they were probably still doing it. Even Uganda is not even a good argument. These people don't even. They supposedly have a sense of government or something going on, but it's not even the same level as the Western nation. It's not even the same playing field.
it's like pointing this
Some
out.
of these countries in Africa, they're basically failed states. They do have some kind of government going on, but it's almost like it's like almost like nothing is governed these areas. It's just weird. It's always in civil wars, always in conflict. It's just weird. Very unstable.
Again, when we're talking about the proposition here, I can't actually think of a serious Republican, a serious person in office, or a serious Christian nationalist who has any sort of following which could actually have anything get done like this, who's proposing anything other than amending laws, having them enforced to suit their preferences, like you. Hang on, just like you are. You can't call that fascism then, by your own definition.
So it depends on like what. So that's why I'm just not even clear on what you think that Christian nationalists are going to do when they take over. So
I'm asking you, which Christian nationalist has a serious proposition for utilizing force other than democracy and persuasion, which is what you're considering fascism to be. You said all of them are fascist right in your opening statement. Can you give me the proposals that they're making?
The opening statement. Yeah. So the Christian nationalist idea of destroying the Constitution, right? Of actually taking away these checks and balances that actually, for instance, taking away democracy, for instance, taking away the women's right to vote, for instance. So these things.
Wait. If you take away women's rights to vote via persuasion and democracy, that's not fascism.
No, by the time you get to that, right, by the time you're actually taking away a right that is necessary for a well-functioning government, now you're actually involved
It's
in
not
fascism.
necessary for a well-functioning government.
You're limiting the power. You're actually putting the power in men. So now men control the government. So yeah, that would actually start to be trending.
Wait, hang on. Well, okay, so I mean, then 18-year-olds control the government, and 17-year-olds don't. They're disenfranchised.
So if now you're talking about why do we enfranchise?
No, I'm
people
pointing
at a
out.
certain
I'm
age.
pointing out something important here.
Yeah,
This is
you're
still
changing the subject,
No,
but-
I'm going to stay on the subject. Use of force
So-
rather than persuasion, democracy. I still haven't heard a single Christian nationalist thought leader that you can name who has any sort of serious following, any sort of political following, has any sort of moxie that
100,000
can
votes
get this
sounds
done.
like a big following, but yeah. So I think like this is a thing that people can test and go see like what actually are Christian nationalists.
Yeah, who
arguing
though?
for.
Can you name a name? Can you give me the name?
No, I don't.
Because there isn't any, Richard. There's none who aren't using.
Yeah, that's
and by the
checkable.
way, so Richard, here's Richard's entire argument reduced. This is wild. And you can, if I'm straw manning this, I would like you actually to correct
Okay,
it.
yeah,
But isn't it the case that what you're saying here is, as long as Christian nationalists utilize persuasion and democracy to change any amendments we don't like, any laws we don't like, and we utilize only persuasion and democracy to do that, and then enforce those laws tailored to our preferences, that is not indeed fascism at all, is it?
There's two possible outcomes. So one is
No. It's right there. Let's stay right there. Let's stay right there. That's a great. That's a great argument right here. This is
That
so
is not
great.
to do that if we don't like. Any laws we don't utilize persuasion and democracy to change any amendments we don't like, any laws we don't like, and we utilize only persuasion democracy to do that, and then enforce those laws tailored to our preferences, that is not indeed fascism at all, is it?
There's two possible outcomes. So one is that it's not. The other is that if they start actually using violence to suppress the vote, for instance, if they actually start contradicting the humanist necessary rights-based democracy,
let's say that
if they
doesn't
get
happen.
rid of the democracy and the persuasion part, now they're fascists.
Well, they can limit democracy.
Once you've got billy clubs beating people up for saying things you don't like.
Yeah, I know, but nobody's proposing that. No Christian nationalist. You can't name one. Name one. Can you just name one? Just one.
What will you do if I have YouTubers out there find a bunch of names that fit that? Like, what behavior would you engage in?
I would engage with those same YouTubers, and I would say, look, let's go through it. Are these people actually proposing that we're using force? These serious, like guys who can actually get this done, they're seriously proposing that we're using force in order to do anything other than enforce laws that the majority of people want because they're voting them in.
Getting rid of democracy itself then would not be an example of that. That would actually be instituting a fascist government. So
you're not getting rid of democracy by limiting it. No, all you're doing is putting bumpers on it. Like you want.
No. Like if you take away the votes of half the people, you're actually working.
That's not destroying democracy. That's flat out illogical. Then why can't 15-year-olds vote?
So that gets to the competence argument, right? So there are people who are adults, let's say 40-year-olds, who can be declared legally under due process of law to be incompetent. And so then they don't get the vote.
Okay, so help me out here. Why is it then that if we raised, let's just say hypothetically, we raised the voting age to 35, is that fascism?
Yeah, I would say so. It's because you're disenfranchising. You're disenfranchising competent people who are actually part of the society and therefore have an equal. Do
you think 17-year-olds are a lot less competent than 18-year-olds?
So that varies case by case. So
exactly. It varies case by case.
If we wanted to have a better system, we could have competency tests, and so decide the age rather not by age, but by whether you pass the competency test. And then some people over 18 would not qualify as competent, and some people under 18 would qualify as competent.
What about prisoners?
That would be the most rational system.
Should prisoners be able to vote?
Say again?
Should prisoners be able to vote?
Not when they're in prison because they've actually gone through due process.
Due
process. They didn't have the right taken away.
So that's not fascism, right?
It was due process.
So you can limit prisoners being able to vote.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's not fascism.
Yeah,
but you can't limit any other voting block.
That's a punishment for a crime. So that's through due process, not arbitrarily.
Yeah, but it's still democracy. Let's say that you had like only people who could own property could vote. That would still be a democracy.
Yeah, true.
So the thing is like what you're saying here makes no sense. I just asked you if you limit the electorate. Does that get rid of democracy? You say, or is that fascism? You said yes. The thing is, though, is that it still holds that it's using persuasion and democracy. It's still a democracy.
In the sort of you're using the word differently than I was. So
I don't think I am.
When I'm talking about rights-based democracy, I am actually talking about all competent people should have an equal say in the government, so they should be enfranchised. If you're disenfranchising people, you're heading towards fascism because now you're imposing force.
That doesn't mean it's fascist.
Don't have a participation in the government.
You see how what you're doing is equivocating here. You're using the ambiguity of the language in order to switch between two different definitions.
No.
When you said democracy here,
you're saying Ralph Laureano self-complacence? That's how you say it? With a polished type of animal civilization geared to sense gratification is delusion, and such civilization is not worthy of the name. No, it's not. At that point, we're just animals, because people don't understand. Before Christianity came to Europe, we were basically pagan, crazy people. Just with weird traditions and praying for the rain to just give us whatever rain on Tuesday. It was crazy, and there was a lot of incest as well. There was a lot of that too. Christianity gave Europe a sense of direction and principle to establish what we know today as the Western world. You take a religion out of that, you just see a lot of OF people, a lot of degeneracy with the same-sex marriage, and people just people effing whatever they can see that has 4 legs, or it gets very crazy, guys. And you can see in the music as well, like arts, music, literature. Oh, the literature is insane. Feminists understood this. That if they can take Christianity out of the equation, it's easier for them to just advance their mission.
Does democracy require full participation? No. Does it require in any way, shape, or form everybody can vote? No. Can we have certain people who they have stakeholder democracy, for instance? You can vote if you meet such and such criteria.
Yeah.
You can vote if you can pass a civics test.
Yeah,
you can
true.
vote if you do this. You can vote. That still fits the criteria of democracy, doesn't it?
That is not what I meant by democracy. You're defining democracy as broadly as possible, which is fair. That's an actual use of the word. In my actual explanation, in my opening, I made very clear that I'm talking about democracy that enfranchises, and not a democracy that limits to an oligarchy, for example. So you got to have rights. To have rights-based democracy, an evidence-based rights-based democracy, all competent people should have an equal say. They should not have it lorded over them by everybody else.
Yeah, but you haven't demonstrated.
But
you haven't demonstrated how that would be fascist if you limit the electorate to like super competent people or people who are very interested in voting, rather than the most bribable portions of it, or if you just have stakeholder democracy. Yeah. Is stakeholder democracy fascist?
So I'm assuming, so like the thing is that stakeholders are everybody. Everybody's a stakeholder.
Well, no, not everybody owns property, for instance.
Any narrower stakeholder is you're actually imposing force on people that don't have a say in the government. So that becomes fascist, yeah.
Is it, so it's inherently fascist? Fascist?
It becomes fascist.
Yeah, but you see how you're using ambiguity again. You're switching between two different things. Yeah, look.
No.
If you say the use of force rather than persuasion in democracy, that's what fascism is. If people utilize democracy to limit democracy, it's still democracy.
Yeah, a fascist democracy.
That's not fascism.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So
it's a fascist democracy?
See, that's the distinction that I was making. If you're having an oligarchy, which is technically a democracy, that's not the democracy I was talking about. The one that we actually need. And so the instrumentation of that is that once a society is using force to impose on other people who don't have a say in the government, now you've got fascism operating.
So parents are fascist?
Say again?
Are parents fascist?
Well, incompetent people aren't relevant to this point. So you keep trying to say.
Wait a second.
I think
17-year-olds are as competent as 18-year-olds for the most part.
And if you want to persuade to actually expand the franchise to 17-year-olds,
but why don't I limit it to 21? Like drinking, you're not old enough to have a beer?
There's no sound basis for that. Actually, the drinking age shouldn't even be 21.
What should it be?
It should be 18.
It should be. What's the sound basis for 18 versus 17?
As soon as you're a competent person, you should have all your rights.
What is the difference
in everybody else? And you should have.
Then, Richard, you're in. I don't understand this either. So then, what? How do we determine, other than arbitrarily, it should be 18?
Do you even want a society where everyone has equal rights and has an equal vote who is competent? Do you want to actually take the rights of voting?
When you're talking about voting, I would raise the voting age. Yeah.
You would raise the voting age. Yeah. So that would be contrary to evidence. That'd be contrary to evidence in terms of who's actually competent.
Oh, really? When does the brain fully develop?
Well, that's not relevant to competence. Competence has to.
It's not relevant to competence.
No, no, not at all. Because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. Your brain develops continually throughout life. So
yeah, but I mean, it develops.
Being more developed doesn't make you more competent. Competence is actually meeting a threshold of the ability to understand rational decisions.
And do we test for that?
Medical ethics.
Yeah, it's called IQ.
Ethics boards, when they determine competency, they run a competency test to determine that.
Yeah, there's a test. Is there a test for you to be enfranchised?
I would approve of one.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is that then how can you say it's competency? You can't say that these people are competent. You don't even test them.
Well,
nothing. And the thing is back to this, it also doesn't help your argument at all. How?
If someone's not competent, they can get declared incompetent. You can force the issue and have the competency test done.
Yeah, but that's different than competency in voting. Do you agree with me that there's a bunch of really, really, really uninformed voters who go out and vote anyway?
That's not the kind of competency I'm talking about. Competency When you do a medical ethics test for competency, you're not testing whether they are a scientist or have medical knowledge or whatever. You're testing whether they have the ability to understand and make decisions rationally. So that does mean that they can make stupid decisions and still be competent.
Why wouldn't you put that for like voting then? Why is that a problem to do?
Because the thing is that for voting, and I understood this later in life. Government prefers stupid people to vote rather than smart people, because smart people means that the leaders have to be smarter than them. When smart people decide whether or not what kind of leader they want, they ask and they expect higher standards. Stupid people don't, because their emotion is driven. They don't even understand how the government works. But the leaders understand that they're stupid. That's why they're not in favor of raising the minimum of age for voting or civil tests. For that same reason.
This is the thing. There's a lot of political science on this. If you actually do that, then two things happen that lead to bad results. One is people start gaming who gets to pass the test and who not, and so you've got an oligarchy again. The other thing that happens is that you can't have a society of the governed if you're excluding people who actually are competent. If you make up an idea of competence that doesn't really relate to the competency that we're trying to talk about now.
Yeah, but you also have
can you make rational
but you have
decisions?
other issues with
if
universal.
If you have the ability to make rational decisions about your life, then you actually are competent enough to be.
But you have bad issues here too with universal suffrage. You end up with incompetent voters who can be bribed because they, on the short term, they get things that they want.
That's not the competency that we're talking about.
It is the competency that we're talking about.
Now you're obfuscating by using two different concepts of competency.
I mean, okay, first of all, I didn't even define what I meant by it. I'm trying to use what you mean by it.
No, I'm watching you do it.
And so the second portion here that we're looking at is, again, your claim here is that suffrage has to be universal or it's fascism. When your opening statement, when I asked you to define this, and I remember I made sure I got you to do it 3 different times so that I was clear, use of force rather than persuasion and democracy. You're now saying that the democracy that you're talking about is a requirement of full enfranchisement. Full enfranchisement.
Well, I mean, apart from the exceptions we just talked about, right?
Yeah, right. So the thing is that anything outside of that is fascist? Is a fascist society?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, it depends on how it implements that. So fascism comes through implementation, right? So yeah, I would say there's definitely degrees of fascism there.
But it's not a fascist society.
It might be. It might be slightly fascist. It might be heading towards a fascist state. It could be half fascist. Yeah, there's degrees of fascism.
It's 10% fascist?
10% what?
But pointing this out, when you say use of force rather than persuasion, democracy, and that's what fascist is, you still haven't actually told me how it is any of these Christian nationalists or any Christian nationalist propositions or any person making these propositions is doing anything other than saying that through persuasion and democracy, we can change and tailor society to fit our preferences. And we can use the very constitutional precepts to do that. If it's the case that we did not have the 14th Amendment, hang on. I just want to make sure that I got this right.
Go for it.
Our founding fathers were fascists, right?
Yeah, I just realized something.
Yeah.
We've been talking for almost an hour about the definition of fascism, which is not even what we're supposed to be debating.
Well, hang on. It shows an incoherent or coherent worldview.
It doesn't even depend on the definition. We could just erase fascism from my opening statement. It had no effect on anything I argued. What I argued was that a secular humanist society creates better outcomes for everybody. I presented a bunch of evidence for that fact, scientific evidence, comparative evidence, historical evidence. So what we call fascism is irrelevant to what is actually better.
Well,
so my argument is secular humanism is a better society. It actually works better. We have tons of examples of this. More secular societies are better in every metric that we can look at.
Yeah, but do you see
Christian societies?
Do you see the
Christianity
smuggle?
is not a good idea to recommend for.
But do you see the smuggle here for better?
Say again?
You see, the smuggle here is for better. You immediately smuggle in under better.
But I defined operation.
I know. You
means.
define things that you like. I get it. But the thing is that's the smuggle of better. Hang on.
Well, everybody likes emotional and physical prosperity. Everyone likes that.
Well,
right.
The thing is like under, well, I don't know.
Peace and justice.
Muslims don't seem to. but the thing is.
And you would argue they're irrational.
Yeah.
In that
So
regard, right?
okay. But the point is, let's start with this. I just want to make sure that I got this right. Under this definition and everything that you just said, our founding fathers were fascist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Our founders were fascist.
Yeah, they were at least slightly fascist. They actually.
Well, I mean, they were really fascist because they almost let nobody vote.
They legalized slavery. Yeah.
They let nobody vote, basically.
I mean, yeah, there's a restricted vote.
Now, under our founders' version of what voting was, and I just want to be very, very clear on this, under what their version of voting was, if there was no slavery, none of that, they still would have been fascist, right?
Yeah. Why are we still talking about the definition?
Here's why. Because
this is irrelevant.
Because I want to make sure that we have coherency when we get to prescriptions. That's why. So I just want this answered, and then I'll tell you what.
No,
if you let me finish this off, you can interrogate me.
I could have saved the whole hour here to say, like, I'll agree with any definition of fascism you want, and then now let's talk about what we're supposed to be debating. We haven't even talked once about what we're supposed to be debating for this whole hour.
We have been.
We've been arguing over the definition of fascism, which is a useless point.
No, we're arguing over societal prescriptions.
No, because what happened is,
view.
and I never understood this until I started listening to Andrew Wilson. The problem is if you don't identify, and this happened with one of the debates with Destiny. He was saying that Trump was a fascist, and so we started to define what fascism it was. And all of a sudden, Andrew will say, okay, based on your definition, but what is happening in Portland, it's authoritarian and fascism. No, it's not fascism. Okay, so what is fascism? So the reason you want to define what fascism is, and that point when we go to the prescriptions, you're not going to insert your arguments until nothing gets done. No arguments gets done. Whether are in favor of Andrew or not in favor of Andrew. That's what it is.
In my view, it's not irrational.
Yes.
So not only that,
yes,
let's
get hung up for an hour.
Well, let's get into it then. Let's get in. I'll tell you what. Let's get into whatever you want.
What we're supposed to be debating is
I'll
irrational.
tell you what. Get into
irrational the whole time.
Get into whatever you want then. Ask me whatever you want.
Well, actually, I'm content with you to ask me questions.
Great.
But I want you to ask me questions. I want you to ask me questions about what we're actually supposed to be debating.
I'm trying. Listen, the reason...
No, you're arguing over semantics. I will even grant, for the purposes of this debate,
okay,
I will grant your definition of fascism.
Okay, then we'll move right into the next thing. Let's talk about better.
We're talking about better.
We're talking about better. So what is better other than your sense of preference and other people's senses of preference? What is it?
What is better is what's better for everyone.
Yeah, hang on. That's a tautology.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So like what is necessary for everyone to achieve the things that everyone wants, right? So every rational person knows that they need peace and justice to achieve all the other things they want to achieve. They know they want, if they can access it, increased emotional and material prosperity. Everybody really wants these things. Even if they don't know it, you can talk to them and get them to rationally understand that those are the things that they want. So that is why it derives from what everybody wants. Everybody wants those things, and everybody needs those things in order to accomplish anything else they want. So that follows necessarily from that status. And so once you get that, now you have the goal, and from that goal and the physical facts of how things work, physical systems work, how social systems work, and so on, then you get the ought, right? So you have the desire. Everybody agrees on what the goal is.
So can I just ask, does better here then just mean what people want?
It means a specific thing that people want, not just whatever they want.
Okay. Right? Well, wait, hang on.
So we've empirically determined that everyone wants these things: peace, justice, prosperity. Everyone wants those things. So that's an empirical fact. That's a fact. That's not a supposition or anything like that. Once you accept that fact, there are then certain things about what best achieves that and what doesn't best achieve that. And
yeah, but do you
those
see?
things are then prescribed.
Yeah, but do you see the next? Do you see the next smuggle when you say things like justice? What is justice?
So that's not a smuggle. What people want.
Yeah, but when you say people want justice,
so now you want to waste another hour.
I'm not trying to. I'm literally trying. Everybody wants this thing. Okay, what's the thing? Stop wasting my time.
Yeah, I think that's silly because I think people.
I don't think it's silly. I think that
people understand justice is
what?
Is the equitable enforcement of the laws.
That's all justice is? Because you can have unjust laws. right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Now you're changing terms in terms of what kind of
I'm
justice
just
we're
making
talking
sure I got your terms.
What people want is to be treated equitably. So if everyone is being treated equal, then that's justice. And so to actually maintain that, and also to the enforcement of rights, right? So like the right to assemble, the right to free speech, and so on. If people are not allowed to have those things, then you're facing it's unjust because you're distributing rights and properties, or rights differently to different people. So justice is equitable treatment. So people want basically fair. They want things to be fair.
They want them to be fair. So if it's the case,
and they need them to be, right? So like there's an actual particular fairness here that even if someone isn't aware of what would be fair,
so this is a massive appeal to.
They still need a fairly adjudicated society to achieve all the other things that they want.
So this is a massive appeal to consensus.
It is an appeal to what people absolutely need to achieve all of their desires. So that's a fact of the.
You see how he answered the question, and he answered a question in a way that has nothing to do with the question in itself. It's a way of answering the question, but has nothing to do with the question. It's weird.
Social system.
Yeah, well,
Any social
hang
system.
on.
That's why I cited Axelrod. That's why I cited Axelrod's studies in cooperation, because he proved that there's literally no social system in any possible world that doesn't need this property to be maintained for everybody to achieve all their other goals, and not for there to be failure modes where you get excess conflict.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily what people want. And so this is the problem, right? When you say it's specific, it's specific things that people want. Hang on. And then you say something like justice. That's a very loaded term, justice. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
That's
to Islam, justice means something way different than it means to us. To Christians, justice means something very different than it does to secularists.
That's why I constructed my argument
Richard,
in the opening.
Let me respond real quick.
Okay, but
then I'll let
you're skipping right past what I
And the thing is that you just defined it as equitable treatment, and this is desirable by all people, but it's not. Equity itself is not the desire of all people for justice.
Let's go back to what my actual opening statement was, right? So what I actually argued. So I argued that I said the word need. So I argued that people need this justice to achieve all the other things that they want.
That's
things
worse.
go worse for them if they don't have justice. So people can have a mistaken understanding of what justice is. People can want things that are self-harming, that's going to do bad for them. My discussion was need. So whether you believe it or agree with it or understand it yet, you need certain things to be the case. You need peace. You might think it's great. Why don't we just fight a war everywhere constantly and just be constantly at war? You might want that. You might think that, but you would be wrong in terms of what would help you accomplish the things you want. You need peace, actually, whether you're aware of that or not. So peace is essential.
That's another smuggle.
Need peace. It's not a question.
No, that's tautological again.
This is a physical social system thing. So if you don't have peace,
Richard,
people's ability to achieve
how
their
is it
goals
not a
gets impaired.
tautology to say we need it because we need it?
No. So if you want to accomplish your goals, that ability, whatever
you can
goals
accomplish your goals without peace.
It's impaired, right? So you obviously,
yeah, but see what I mean?
So,
it's like that's not a need.
No, it's yes, it is.
No, it's not.
If you want to maximize your ability to do this,
yes.
Right? So you don't want to throw impairments on yourself to make it harder to achieve your goals. Just because you could achieve goals, maybe it's much harder. You absolutely do want to have it not be harder, right? So everybody, that's a need. People need it to be easier, right? So people need.
Well, I don't think that you demonstrated the need, but I'm just willing to grant it, just to move the conversation forward. Which Christians, the idea that there's a need for peace in order to accomplish goals. Which Christian nationalists are proposing war?
Proposing war? I think there's a lot of Christian nationalists.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, I can't name anyone right now.
Because
because there's none. Okay, there's the end of the debate. Man, this is so easy. There's none. Now you can say, we can talk about, certain nations, mostly Islamic nations, that they are, potentially asking for war. Or trying to be in war, like Iran, Syria, Pakistan against India. Like, we can go, on and on and on. It's easy, but somehow for the Christian, it's not.
There's not a single one.
I'm pretty sure, don't a lot of Christian nationalists support the war in Israel? Or are they against it? Support the war in Israel?
Oh my God!
Or are they against it? What's your take on that?
They're against it.
They're usually pretty anti-Zionist.
Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah, they're usually pretty
But they're also pretty anti-Muslim. So
Yeah,
do
well-
they-
But anti-Muslim doesn't mean that we want to just delete these people. Like, it has nothing to do with it. Here, you don't have a bunch of Christians say, yeah, let's go and just delete these Muslim nations. The opposite is true. And you can see it in social media all the time.
think
I
Israel
think that
should
they
get out of
usually.
Gaza? Is
Well,
that-
the thing that's funny is
Are
like
you pro-Palestinian?
The
Is that
Christian,
the
no,
position?
the Christian nationalist position, generally speaking, when it comes to war, especially like war between Palestine and Israel, is frankly not our business, right? So we would be promoting the peace and welfare of our people. And our people group, which would be
Yeah.
United States citizens. So the thing is like
until you get into power, and then the same thing happens that happened every other time we get Christian governments in power, is we get an increase in war.
That's every.
So you might think that that's what's going to happen, but as soon as you give the hands over to
democracy
you're
has
gonna
not
see a
prevented
lot more
that.
warmongering.
Democracy has not prevented war.
History has shown that. Democracy has reduced war.
Oh, well, I don't know. Has it?
Yes, it has.
Well, let's talk about.
Statistically.
Yeah, let's just talk
I
about the
cited
20th.
studies. Actually, I cited books and summaries in my opening.
Let's just hang on, Richard, hang on. Let me finish real quick.
The enfranchisement of women reduced interstate conflict, and you can show where it was, like where women's.
But no
started.
Christian nationalist is proposing war.
It doesn't matter what they're proposing. What matters?
It does matter what they're proposing.
No, it does. It doesn't, because when we look at historical past, what has happened, they can say whatever the hell they want to say. They're not necessarily telling the truth. They're not necessarily correctly.
You can say that
what's-
about any system of governance.
Correct. So the point is,
So who cares?
so we look at the evidence. So the evidence is historically,
Uh-huh.
Christianity running governments does not work out well. You get more war. So regardless of what Christians say or want, like, Jesus said, turn the other cheek. So he's totally anti-war. And yet what happens as soon as Christians get control of government? Wars constantly. In fact, when the founding fathers created the document, they were on the, and I mentioned this, they were on the end of hundreds of years of Christian warmongering. So it doesn't matter what Christians say. What matters is what they do.
Yeah.
And history gives us the evidence of what they do.
Well, here's the thing. The idea here is just this. I need a proposition from you which fits this criteria that Christians aren't actually, if they're in charge, going to give you the same things. Meaning, when you say, hang on.
That's a different thing.
Hang on. When you say that it's persuasion democracy or it's leading towards fascism, you make these claims that, wait a second, when Christians are in charge, it leads to more war. I'm even willing to grant...
I didn't say that. I actually didn't say that. I didn't say when Christians are in charge, it would lead to more war. What I meant is when you have...
Well, that sounds like a performative contradiction.
No,
but
because
okay.
if you take the founding fathers, they were mostly Christian.
That's right.
And so, but they understood that the government could not be Christian.
So Christians in charge.
So, yeah, but they made the government not operate as a Christian government, right? So it was equal to everybody. It treated everybody the same. It did not impose any Christian things.
So,
right?
Christians are in charge of the government.
Christians can
That's fine.
certainly vote for secular humanist governments and prefer to, even argue that they should.
So if it's the case that Christians are in charge of the entire government because they're voted into office, and it's the case that they begin to amend it, let's just say, for instance, not only does that not meet any of your criteria for fascism, doesn't meet any of your criteria for basically for anything bad. Why shouldn't people go and vote Christians into office as much as possible, even if the preference and tailoring of people is going to be to remove these things that you consider enshrined rights?
That was my argument. That, in fact, we can separate Christians into two groups. The ones that agree that we should have a secular humanist government, right? Yeah. So they're actually agreeing with me on this.
What, bro? What do you say? Oh, come on, man. What are you saying? Andrew Wilson is 100% closet GAY man. Come on, bro. Quote me later when he gets arrested doing meth on a GAY hooker. Okay, bro. If you don't have evidence about that, shut up.
Sure.
So they're not a threat to this. The Christians who want to dismantle that, they're a threat to this. So if they use legal process to get there, then what ends up, like at that point, would be a fascist state, right? So it's like they're promoting, like actually moving towards fascism, even if they don't think they are or whatever. But again, I think we're arguing over the definition of fascism.
Well, because the problem.
Let's take fascism out
I don't
of it.
think we're really arguing over the definition.
Let's say fascism doesn't exist. The word doesn't mean anything. Yeah. Nothing is fascist. Let's just say that.
Yeah, nothing's fascist.
So the issue is
outcomes.
Outcomes, exactly.
So let's start with births. For outcomes, how are you going to solve the birth rate problem? You're just going to do mass migration, right?
Well, right now, immigration is working fine at that in every country. It is actually.
So hang on.
If you look at Canada, Sweden, even.
And are we getting all of those people from Christian nations who haven't ought to breed?
Say again?
Are we getting those people?
I think you're projecting. I think you are the GAY at this point. Unless you have the evidence, I will not even suggest saying stuff like that, man.
Mostly from Christian nations where they have a higher population of people.
Unless you don't have an argument,
they're Christians and they haven't ought to breed.
Well, the reality is that once you get into a free democratic society, it's very expensive. So children become expensive. So we see this, the third generation rule. You bring in immigrants, by the third generation, they're having children at the same rate as everybody else. Rate. Because it's too expensive to have
agree.
Kids. Yeah.
So your whole plan is to use the third world or third world nations or places like this as basically a breeding tube for your society, right?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a callous way to put.
But it's true,
describe
isn't
human
it?
beings.
Like, I mean,
human beings aren't breeding tubes.
Look,
they're actual people.
How are you not doing that though? Isn't the plan for you to use the third world in order to import as many people because they breed and we don't?
That's right. And what part of our plan should be to uplift the third world as well. So that will also bring down that. So
we have a 2-minute warning.
All of this wraps up around 2080. Projections are that the population of the Earth will start to decline by 2080. We're not there yet. So when that does happen, there's two things we could do.
It could happen long before that, by the way.
Not according to the math so far. The stats show it's about like 2070, 2080.
Yeah, the problem is that the UN has been consistently wrong on their estimates.
I'm not sure if that's UN stats, but
I think it is. I think you're referencing United Nations stats or whoever you're.
I don't think it's just stats, right? It's an actual scientific study with math and everything, right? So like if you're going to say that it's wrong, you've got to actually prove that it's wrong and find like where is their math wrong.
Well, I'm not. Hang on. I'm not quibbling over whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think that is even possible that it could happen before then.
Yeah. I mean, logically possible. It's not likely though.
But hang on. Whether it is or not,
the birth rates are too high right now.
Why is it that we should not? How does it not lead to a better society when it's the case that we can have people who have shared value structures, shared value systems, right, and are at least somewhat like-minded because they have intergenerational patriotism? My father's father's father died here. Yeah. My parents tilled this land. My parents came from this area. That leads to direct patriotism, things like this. Yeah. Why is it a better plan to use the third world as a breeding tube?
The same thing happens by the third generation. Third generation rule, just as patriotic,
that's what it
just
is.
as invested. So, and that's
so people that are in the third world are the same as people that are in the first world. I mean, if you're a Christian, you can make that argument because you see people, you tend to respect the human capacity of humans by the individuals, right? Because Christians tend to do that, right? They do respect life, and we do believe that people need to be respected regardless of their background. But when we are not naive either. You cannot compare somebody culturally from Africa. For some people from Western Europe, both generation has established a lifestyle. So somehow African can go to Europe and supposedly assimilate, which is hard sometimes when they come to with groups. But European coming to Africa bad because colonization. And then at the same time, we need these immigrants because we have a low birth rate. But at the third generation, we still have the same problem. It's all circular, man.
Been the case. Like it's been the case when we had the Irish. It's been the case when we brought in the Chinese. So like we have Chinese Americans that are, family's been here over 100 years. So this is.
Is that what's going on in the UK?
Mr. Handlebar Mustache won the video evidence of Andrew promiscuity in AK, por favor. Just trying to make sure he's truly masculine enough. I don't know what you're saying, man. I don't know what you're saying.
Well, I'm not going to discuss what's specifically going on in
What did he say?
Family's been here over 100 years. So this is.
Is that what's going on in the UK?
Well, I'm not going to discuss what's specifically going on in the UK.
I mean, I'm just asking, like, by the third generation, do you think that the Muslims are just going to, like, be waving flags like they are in Dearborn? They're just like, yay, America?
Probably. Well, I don't know about that, but probably statistically, yeah. That's what
that's not. We don't see evidence of that happening. The channel is focused on male improvement. Around here, we love men and only men because men are hot. Liking women is like gay and stuff, bro. Ask Fuente. Bro, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you need help, man. Music by Brian 2024. I think you need help. I think you're the one thinking about man.
The science shows.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, the thing is that
third generation.
All that you're doing is, it sounds like you're just outsourcing. You're saying, hey, look, we do need births to go up.
That's just human
so
resources.
Just
but why
more
is
immigrants.
it that when we're talking about human resources,
Yeah.
right? The thing that makes all these third worlders have all these children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't they have an ought from their religion to do that?
So
don't you kind of need the Christians to keep breeding people
I'll give
for
you a
you?
chance to respond, and then we do.
Yeah,
have
go ahead.
Q&A.
So now you're distinguishing between, do they believe they have an ought?
Yeah.
Or is that ought true or false? So
Do they believe if they have the ought to do it?
yeah, they believe that.
And so they are doing it because they believe that they have an ought to do it. And you
by the
are
third
utilizing. Hang
generation, they'll
on.
melt
I just want to
into
point this
the
out.
same status.
You
So,
hang on,
wait,
Richard. Let me
let's
finish
talk
my
about-
point, and I'll let you get into it. I promise.
Let's talk about
no. Let
actual-
me finish my point first. The case of the matter is that you just admitted that Christians have an ought to have children. Because they have that ought to have children, you're going to use them as a breeding factory for your nation. What's really funny?
Not just Christians.
What's really funny about this, though?
Also are having
why
children.
shouldn't we have the same programs, same money spent, same things like this on our own domestic policy, so that we can get our own domestic birth rate back up? Are people groups not worth preserving at all?
Here's a point where we might agree on something.
Okay.
So
We'll end with this point.
when we get to the point where we're globally the population is declining, right? So that we don't have any alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So we have two options at that point. One is to start retooling society to survive the decline of population, which is entirely doable, especially with robotics, et cetera. Or we can actually start investing money in actually paying people to become parents. So if you actually want American women to have more kids and get married and so on, I think the government should pay them to do that, and then you would.
They already do.
You would have to persuade us to do that.
Well, hang on. But Richard,
we do have to go in the Q&A so people can. I think there are a number of people that want to ask questions. But this has been a fantastic discussion, gentlemen. We really do appreciate it. Stellar debate.
Good back and forward. I'm not gonna lie, that was a very good back and forward.
Very quickly, come on up, Duff. Thank you.
Very good back and forward.
Dr. Carrier, you said human well-being above all else. Considering you're pro-choice and abortion completely disregards the well-being of that human being, isn't it correct to say you don't value human well-being above all else?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a good question because it didn't come up in the debate or anything like that. So the thing is human well-being, there has to actually be a person, right? So and it's evidence-based reasoning. So here's where I probably agree with you. I actually agree with the original Roe v. Wade decision, which said third trimester abortion does have right to child issues. So that the defense of the mother is the only way that you should have third trimester abortions. That's Roe v. Wade. That's actually the ruling that was there. I agree with that because it's ambiguous at that stage whether there's a person there or not because of the development of their brain. Before the third trimester, there's no physically possible way that there's a person in there. So it's pre-person. It's basically a half-built house rather than a fully running one. So I think, rights, I think the personal rights in some sense, you can justifiably say they should start in the third trimester.
I hate to do it. We have to do rapid fire where there aren't any responses. So it's just the question. That's it.
Totally fine. I'm going to borrow from Andrew Wilson. I want your yes or no answer, and then I want your qualifier.
Okay.
From your worldview, if Christian nationalists, through persuasion and democracy, did make the requisite changes to make a homosexual action illegal and punishable by death, would that be fascist?
Yes.
Wow.
All right, Jake.
Sure.
Dr. Carrier,
I don't know
I
what
would
you're saying,
say
bro.
that fascism
Think you have
actually
problems.
is a political ideology that started in the 20th century in Italy. But would you say that all of the native tribes throughout history, including all of the Aztecs and chieftains, are all fascist? And if so, what would you define the movement spearheaded by Benito Mussolini as?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that gets into the whole, again, we're talking about, I don't know why it matters, the definition of fascism. It's so pointless.
Yeah, you know how you notice how he's glossing the fact that why the definition of fascism doesn't really matter that much. It matters because for these people, fascism can mean anything that has a name Trump in it. Or it can mean anything else that's not really close to what we know of fascism. That's why we have to define what fascism is. And then from there we can move. The reason they don't want to define what fascism is because it's easier to just win the arguments against them. That's what it is, guys.
doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is what it is.
Because you called us all fascist.
Exactly. See.
So the short answer, like if you wanted a yes or no, right?
So, like I gave you what I think fascism is, where it comes from.
I mean,
Yeah.
your
Are all
cyber
of
was
these
the
ancient
problem.
tribes
I also
fascist? And
love
if so, what
strong
is
manly
the
men,
movement that was
sweetie and
spearheaded by
strong,
Mussolini
no woman
called?
allowed.
Yeah,
Still-
I'm not sure.
You're just a troll, man. Yeah, at least listen, you're a troll, man. That's what you are. You're a troll. I don't know
I
what to
understand the
say.
question. So the word was definitely coined in the early 20th century. I mean,
Hit the super
Italians
chat,
are the ones
and
who
I'll believe
invented it.
Hit the super
concept
chat, and
of
I'll
what
believe
it
you.
refers to doesn't necessarily have to originate when the word originated, right? So as regarding other tribes and stuff, we'd have to go case by case as to how they actually conducted their government. I don't know enough about the Aztecs to answer that question. But if you look like at the Bush people in Africa right now, yeah, the Bush people in Africa are democratic, and so were the Iroquois.
The Aztecs.
I don't know enough about the Aztecs. to answer
Okay,
that
any
question,
Indian
so-
tribe that didn't
Yeah,
practice
of course. I don't know anything about the. Isn't that interesting? He's okay with him bringing some of these third world immigrants to this country, but at the same time, he knows nothing about them, nothing about their culture, nothing about them. It's interesting.
democracy, were they fascist?
If they were using force to enforce their will,
The follow-up is, what would you define the movement spearheaded by Benito Mussolini? What is that called?
well, fascism.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't understand why that's
All right,
relevant.
rapid
Okay.
fire.
Do you think that the millions of Muslims that you advocate come in to help solve our fertility rates share the same values that you do of democracy and individual liberty?
No.
I don't know about millions. What over what period of time are you talking about?
You don't think that you would take millions to help solve our fertility rate?
No, so would I do that?
You advocated for that.
So assuming we all agree. So remember, we're talking about voting. So we all, as a society, agree that this is a problem to be solved, right? It is not automatically the case that we need to solve the fertility rate problem. We might actually be better off with like returning to the population level of World War II. Like our society might actually be better off if we did that.
There's no
Getting
evidence of
there is
that.
a problem. But anyway, regarding who we'd bring in, I think we just follow sensible, rational, evidence-based policies as to who we allow to immigrate in.
Not
I don't
answering
think
the
they're gonna be
question.
majority Muslim because that's not normally how we're making these calls. Like we've got people coming from Asia, we've got people coming from the Christian countries south of us, and so on. So, and the final result will be by the third generation, they're not going to be the scary Muslims that you're worried about. So,
All right.
Unless they're
If you can-
Dearborn.
If you can wait just a few more minutes, folks, if you can keep the discussion down, just so people that are sitting around you can hear. Go ahead.
You keep granting yourself like morality, good, evil, justification, but I'm not going to let you run from it. And I need for both of you to basically give the account for the justification for your criteria. Justify your stance. Justify the criteria you're using to justify your stance, please.
so I'm not sure which stance that you're referring to. Given your intro, it sounds like you're asking for how I derive moral values or how I derive prescriptive conclusions. If that's what your question is, then I recommend, again, that article I talked about in Religions, because I literally build it all out there with all the cited sources and all of that. And it is what we've talked about a little bit in our discussion. I talked about it in my opening, which is how we construct ought statements from desires and the way the world works and what achieves those desires.
My question pertains to the source you use with Immanuel Kant. Why would you use Immanuel Kant to try to show that oughts can be derived from an is, even though that Kant himself believed that this only worked in practical rationality and not in moral requirements?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So he specifically says in Critique of Pure Reason on page 556, he says experience teaches what is and what has happened, but not what ought to happen.
Yeah, so that's a good question. The reality is that Kant admitted, so when that came up in the discussion, I needed to establish that there is a way to empirically prove an ought. That was before we get to the question, and I made this distinction a couple times. The distinction between oughts that are true and oughts that are morally true. So getting to the moral ought, you're right. Kant had a different maneuver for the moral ought. I actually proved that his maneuver is a hypothetical imperative. That's actually in some of my published peer-reviewed work. So that actually, in fact, he constructed his entire categorical imperative system on a hypothetical imperative. So Philippa Foot, who also pointed this out, was right, that even Kant's categorical imperative is a hypothetical imperative and is proved, even Kant himself tried to prove it the same way. using what he regarded as a universal desire, that everybody desires to be a man of this nature. And therefore, that is why it would compel them, and therefore makes it true that they ought to follow the categorical imperative. So Kant is an example of even Kant, that's what I said, even Kant, who is promoting categorical imperatives, even he agreed that hypothetical imperatives can be proved empirically. So that establishes that. And then we go to the next step, which was that Kant's categorical was a hypothetical.
We have time for just a few more questions.
All right. Dr. Carrier, you stated that you have to look at what Christians have done versus what they say. Should we do the same based upon atheists and what they have done in the past when they have power?
There we go. There we go. Finally, somebody they asked the question: should we judge them based on the way they judge us? Of course. We know guy with the mustache, Stalin, Lenin, a lot of the Mao, a lot of these leaders, even Napoleon, they were not the most Christian people. Let's put it that way. Funny that we never mentioned that kind of argument. Funny.
Sorry, China.
Yeah, so it's a false comparison because Christianity is to religion what secular humanism is to atheism. So you can have like Islam and Christianity are both religions, but you wouldn't say that whatever's true of Islam is true of Christianity. So the same thing goes with atheism. Atheism includes a lot of different worldviews, some of them quite horrible. So it's not just atheism. That's why I'm saying secular humanism. Secular humanism is a subset of atheism.
He's not answering
the question should be secular humanists. So are there evil atheist ideologies? Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. Dr. Carey, multiple times in this debate, you made a positive reference and sentiment to the government created by the American Revolution, which was, at the most critical definition, nominally Christian. Now, in the middle of the debate, you made negative sentiment in reference to the French Revolution, which was the most secular, which is militantly anti-religious. And historians have causally linked the French Revolution and the other revolts to the widespread breakdown of social cohesion in Europe at large, which then led to the societies that turned totalitarian, like Italy, Germany, and Spain, and Russia, Mao's China, and Pol Pot, Yugoslavia with Tito. So would it not be rational and based on evidence that the massive death tolls by those atheist, militantly anti-religious governments lead you to abandon the secular part of your position and instead embrace Christian humanism, which is way better across all metrics of history?
Well, that's a good question, except the last part is false. So finding an exception to the rule doesn't negate the rule, right? So like statistically, so it's a statistical correlation. The correlation is not a full correlation of 2, it's a correlation that's above 1. So statistical correlation is, statistically, Christian governments usually turn out badly. Atheist governments turn out badly when they're not acting in a democratic fashion. So like the French Revolution was definitely a despotic.
So it's only with certain exceptions. Man, this dude is full of it.
Action. So they the actual purge of it. It's very similar to like Marxist Russia, which is this is kind of like, this is not a secular humanist society. This is actually a different form of atheism that is actually toxic in all the same ways that Christian nationalism can be.
For Richard, better is what's better for everyone. Quote from you. I believe you cited social thriving. Recently, I was reading some anthropology work by Dr. Pierce Raft, and let me tell you about a small island off the coast of Australia named Papua New Guinea. On the island, there are the Sambari people, also known as the Cum Warriors.
If you can slow down just a little
bit. Yeah, because everybody was making noise. I couldn't hear
on
you.
The island, on this island of Papua New Guinea, there's the Sambari people, also known as the Semen Warriors. They have a rite of passage where the elders sodomize the children to bring manhood. From all the studies into them and their tradition, the children love it and say it's positive for their society. Now tell me, is it fascist or bad to force that to stop?
I don't know anything about that. Right.
There we go. I don't know anything about them. I cannot comment about that. I don't know about this. I don't know too much about them simply because they're from the third world, guys.
I don't know how much of that is true, and I don't know.
But let's assume it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So let's assume that it is true. Yeah, absolutely. Like that's definitely a violation of human rights, and that's a kind of society that I think.
So what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do here? Just let it happen? That's why a lot of people don't even believe these nations, man. We have a violation of human rights in North Korea. Nobody does anything. The same with Cuba. Nobody does anything. The people don't even mean what they say, man.
Definitely is bad. Like that's what I'm arguing against. Is that that's the kind of society we should not have, and we should actually have a society that prevents that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they like it.
Yeah, but that's the difference between being irrational and having a false belief, and being rational and having a true belief. That's why my argument. I didn't argue that Christians don't believe what they believe. I argued that what they believe is bad. They might not believe that it's bad, but empirically shows that it's bad. Just like that would be empirically bad.
We have. All right, hold on. I got to go to the next question. All right, last question, sir.
All right. Hey, I have a question for both of you. I am blind. I've been blind since birth. There's statistically a very low chance that someone like me will be a net benefit to society. So in the world you would like, in the society you'd like, purely based on your worldview, can you tell me what the place for someone like me would be and how you come to that conclusion?
Damn.
Based on purely your own worldview?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question. I disagree with the premise that you're not...
Listen, English is not my first language, guys, like you guys can tell. But even me, I understood the question clearly. I understood the question. Is a person like him in your worldview is valuable enough to exist? That's it.
Not a net benefit to society. Blind people can accomplish a lot. So there isn't really any way you're not producing a net benefit to society. I don't think blindness impairs your ability to do that.
Well, I'll give you a really quick pithy response.
Statistically, I'm more likely to take more from society than I am to give. It's not that I can't give anything, but net.
That's your metric. Okay.
Yeah, net.
Yeah. You're talking money. Okay. So you contribute, like, as a human being, you contribute a lot to the world that is not financial, right? Like you contribute to the lives of your friends and family. You contribute through work by producing things and so on. So there's a lot of contribution that you're making to society. So I that's why, like, if you just talk about money, that's not relevant. And I think if we look at it in terms of the Rawlsian perspective,
just
which is
general, any type of resource, I'm more likely to need more help than I'm able to provide. I'm more likely to.
That's your net. That's why you said net.
Take any form of resource, energy, community.
I doubt that's as true as you're saying. But even if it's true, let's say it's true, because it's definitely true for some people, for sure. So the whole point of that is, so the Rawlsian perspective is the best society is one that you would arrange, but not knowing who you get to be in that society. Right, so you don't know if you're going to be blind. You don't know if you're going to be poor. You don't know if you'll be a woman. You don't know if you'll be black. And would you still want to be in that society knowing that you won't get to pick who you are in that society? You could end up being anybody, and you'd be happy with that society. And so if you reason it out that way, in the Rawlsian way, you would get the answer to your question, is what would be the best society to arrange for someone who happens to be blind, right? So that if I or someone else ends up blind in that society, we would agree, this is the best society for me to be in, given that. And that's why we're looking at human good. That's really the only resource that we're talking about, not like how much money you make or how much electricity you burn or anything like that. The question is, like, you as a human being, right? Like your life itself, you value your life, right? So you value that. And when you look at it in terms of what it is that you get yourself, would we want to help you continue to do that, right? Like, is in terms of like insurance, like some people's houses burn down, some people's houses don't burn down. But insurance, yeah, a lot of money goes, all of the money that we're paying the insurance company for our premiums goes to pay to build someone a new house. But I never get a new house, right? So I get the coverage, right? So if I do get my house burned down, I do get covered. So the society as a system actually helps people. And so I think that's, if you're disabled, it's the same kind of thing. That if you got the bad end of the stick, the society's actually got insurance to cover that, right? And just the same as anybody else. If someone else here like became blind, it'd be the same thing. They've got insurance, we've got your back. And that's because you are valuable in and of yourself.
All right, so basically didn't see anything. I mean, I think this is the end of this. Sorry for what happened earlier. Basically, my internet went off, and I lost like a quarter of my stream, but it's fine. We managed to just record some of it. Yeah, interesting. I like when Andrew goes to against these more intellectual individuals, right? Because you can hear some of the same arguments even from the perspective of seculars that are less smarter than this guy. It's very similar, right? Even when he debates with a lot of these OF girls from whatever podcast, a lot of these feminists that just go against him in whatever podcast or any regular debates, very similar back and forth, very similar ideas. And just to show you that even though some of them don't even act as smart as this dude right here, the idea is there, the idea is implemented, and there was some pushback from Christians and conservatives, quote unquote, but they were not strong enough like Andrew Wilson in the new school of Christian nationalism. With that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm gonna leave it there. You guys want to support the channel, you can do it through the super chat or simply like and share and subscribe. I will see you in the next one. I'm out.